Welcome. My name is Grandma Storm. I write stories for young adults. Today I am reading chapters 76 through 80 in my book, The Book of Faith. '76. Rat soup was a luxury. Campers at the Deer Queen's Royal Camps for Re-Education and Perfecting of Enlightenment considered it a good day when they found rat parts floating in the soup. Among the starving people of the camp, Old Scratch's talent for trapping rats made him an appreciated fellow. His only horror was Cook. She beat him if he did not bring enough vermin for the soup pot. Misery, misery, complained Old Scratch as he wandered the camp looking for rats. Why be me the object of somebody's fist every single day of me life? His fingers itched his ribs and wandered up under his armpit. He could feel his bones through his scabby skin. He stopped scratching and pulled a dead rat out of his bucket. Rats be as thin as I be. That comment brought to his mind his mule wandering in the woods back home. Wish she would wander into this here camp. I be sure I could eat that whole mule all by me lonesome. Muttering about roast mule, he finished his rounds. 3 rats and 7 mice were the take. He wondered if Cook would beat him. Passing the Building of Enlightenment and Knowledge, he overheard the recitation of the class of new campers. When you are addressed, intoned the gaunt man standing at the front of the room, you are to answer, "This camper lives by the grace of the dear Queen. What is required of this humble camper?" Repeat. "This camper lives by the grace of the dear Queen. What is required of this humble camper?" chorused the class. Again, repeat. "This camper lives by the grace of the dear Queen. What is required of this humble camper?" "You no longer have an identity," droned the man. "You forfeited your rights when you committed the crimes that brought you to this camp. If there is any possible hope of your rehabilitation, it will only come by tearing to shreds your identity and learning that you are nothing." He paused, then droned on. "The dear Queen is the impeccable embodiment of all that is wholesome and genuine." Repeat. The students, Tirzah, Ashiel, Faith, and 2 villagers, had heard this lesson before. The 3 friends purposed to endure as best they could the dear Queen's re-education of philosophical import, the dear Queen's royal histories, and the dear Queen's essential economics, until they developed a plan of escape. Besides, there was the incentive of hunger. The instructor would only sign for soup if students made sufficient effort in their studies. This was also the only time the girls could share a few words with Ashiel. The last thing any of them wanted to do was jeopardize the chance to be together. This was also when they passed a bite of food to him. The little hoard of food in Faith's pockets was surreptitiously shared. When that was gone, she opened the rock and daily broke a new cake into 3 pieces. Ashiel and Tirzah did not know where the little bits of cake came from. They thought Faith's wise planning once more saved the day. It pained Faith she could not give cake to all the campers. Every day was the same. Roll call, inspection, soup queue, work detail, classes, soup queue, lectures, occasional executions, barracks. Their first night, the lecture was on the markings on the bottom of the dear Queen's least favorite teacup. Another lecture was the Dear Queen's thoughts on mud, its uses and abuses. Last night, the lecture was the Dear Queen's meditations on pitchforks. Usually the presenter was the keeper. The mud lecture was given by a brown leather. One night, Cook talked. Tirzah was not sure who was more boring. All campers were required to stand before the lectern and give full attention to the speaker. After a long day and little food, it was difficult to endure. On any whim of the keeper, brown leather, or even the cook, there were executions. Condemned campers were dragged to the back of the camp and thrown into a pit. There was a scream, a splash, and then silence. Repeat. Their minds were recalled to the lesson and the command of the pinch-faced instructor. The Dear Queen is the impeccable embodiment of all that is wholesome and genuine, repeated the class. 77. This camper lives by the grace of the Dear Queen. What is required of this humble camper? Skiva looked at the old woman. She stood with her head bowed and her eyes lowered. Tatters concealed a bony body. I want you to watch someone. Yes, Your Excellency. Skiva decided he liked this woman. Since he arrived, delivering into the hand of the Dear Queen's camp keeper 3 dangerous criminals, he had created a position for himself in the camp. Artfully, he explained his mission as being allied with the Dear Queen. He astutely dropped the name of Dr. Luce. The effect of that conversation was gratifying. He was assigned accommodations and ate meals with the officers. As long as no word traveled from Topeth of his own time in the arena, he felt secure. Now, what profit could be gotten out of that girl and her friends? His brain needed information. He longingly thought of spending a little time with the darkness. Always so handy. Did he dare risk an encounter? Skiva shuddered. He was wary. No, he was bitter. The last time he used that asset, he had gotten what he asked, but what good had it ultimately done him? He was in the camps, wasn't he? And then there was the futures contract he made with the darkness. Whatever did that mean? His momentary glory was not what he hoped for. He was with the power of the land, but he squatted at her feet like a spider. Where he wanted to be was behind the throne, like Dr. Luce, or dare he think, on the throne. Dear queens do not live forever. They have accidents sometimes, don't they? The Dear Queen had called him her spider. Until he could do better, he would be a spider. He liked it. Spiders and their ways could serve as his muse. He would spin a web. He would weave a trap. He just needed something sticky to catch his prey. Yes, my good woman, spoke Skiva. 3 of the new campers here in the Dear Queen's royal camps for re-education and perfecting of enlightenment have aroused my suspicions. Befriend them, watch them, report to me any activity that could be, shall I say, dangerous to their health? Yes, my lord. I speak of the little girl, the young woman Tirzah, and that long-legged boy named Ashiel. Yes, Your Eminence, said the woman without lifting her head. Where and when shall I report to you? Once you have evidence, find me before the lecture. I am housed with officers. I will tell them you are doing important work for me and must admit you. Later, in conversation at dinner, he would mention to the keeper there had been talk at the Dear Queen's court about the camps. lack of devotion to the dear queen, suspicion of wasted resources, or some such nonsense would be his ploy. They would let him do anything he wanted, for a time. He must make his profit and run. 78. He yawned so big, Faith heard his jaw crack. She glanced up from scrubbing the floor and looked at the brown leather. He was asleep on his feet. She wrung out the rag and went back to work. An old woman came to the door struggling with a full bucket. She bumped into the guard, sloshing water down the front of his pants. "You perfect idiot!" roared the brown leather, now fully awake. "What are you doing, you stupid old woman?" Raising his fist, he hit her in the face. The old one crumpled into a heap on the floor. The brown leather kicked her with his boot and stomped out. A low moan came from the bundle of rags. Faith ran to the old woman. Are you all right?" The old woman slowly uncurled. Helping her sit up, Faith daubed at the woman's bloody mouth with her rag. Running to the window, she peeked to see if the brown leather was returning. No one was in sight. He must have gone to his barracks. Faith hurried back to the old one. "Just sit still. I'll finish the floor." Faith finished the job and helped the old one to her feet. The old one patted the girl's head and said, "So pretty." That night, when all was quiet, Faith told Tirzah about the old one. "That was nice you helped her, but don't do it again," warned Tirzah. "No matter how sorry you feel for someone, it is best to leave them alone." The next day, while cleaning the latrines, Tirzah found herself working beside an old woman. The bunch of tatters gave her a toothless grin. She pointed at Tirzah's blonde hair and whispered, "So pretty." When they stood in the line for soup, the same old one had, with a gesture of her hand and a gummy grin, allowed the girls to go before her. Again she murmured, "So pretty." Tirzah decided the old woman must be a half-wit, a harmless, humble half-wit. Later she would remind Faith to stay away from her. That night in the barracks, after the brown leather switched off the light and locked the door, Tirzah and Faith curled together under a thin blanket. "Tirzah?" "What?" "I want to give that old one a bite of cake. She is kind." "Which one are you talking about?" "The one that says, 'So pretty.'" "Don't have anything to do with her. It is not a good idea." "Maybe she could be our friend. Maybe she could escape with us." "Sweet girl, I do not think it is a good idea to give her anything, nor do I think she could help us get away. She certainly could not run." "Yes, Tirzah, and yet I think it is the right thing to do." Tirzah decided to change the subject. "I had a new thought on that brown leather assigned to this barrack. I have been watching." Tirzah went on talking, but Faith was asleep. 79. The scholars were as useless as they were old. Incompetency was the descriptor of their bungling efforts. The regulator was not working. Even Dr. Luce's skills were inadequate. He had to find Ashiel. The brown leathers investigated the confusion at the arena and the escape of the condemned. No conspiracies were uncovered. The dear queen was royally irritated that the Battle of Blood was disturbed. Dr. Luce sent a few cartloads of extraneous citizens to the camps to satisfy the need to do something. She was mollified. He consulted the darkness. They revealed the location of Ashiel and Tirzah in the camps. The prince learned the status of the regulator. He was royally irritated. Cartloads of citizens sent to the camps were not going to mollify him. Dr. Luce bore the pain alone. He sat at his desk to begin the paperwork. In short order, he had strung together enough impressive-sounding, multi-syllabic, incomprehensible words to confound the brain of any man and sure to induce a fit of shaking knees. He rose from his desk and addressed a brown leather. Take this to the dear Queen's royal seal keeper. Inform him copies are to be made of this order. Files are to be properly prepared. Letters of warrant issue. When that is completed, you are to send the best horse and rider to the camps with a letter and acquire the release of the camper known as Ashiel. Bring him back here to me. Yes, Dr. Luce. The brown leather left. Dr. Luce closed the door and staggered to his desk. 80. That is the last load, said Stephen. Right, acknowledged Theophilus. Go see Nicanor. I heard there were scones. What kind? Blueberry. Sounds good. Theophilus climbed in the shaft and rode the lift to the kitchen. The aroma of blueberry scones drifting through the air had attracted Prochorus and Timon as well. Nicanor poured Theophilus a mug of hot tea and slid him a plate with a fresh scone. Since the time of Theophilus's awakening, he and Nicanor bonded in their love for Faith. They never spoke of her. It was enough to know that they both felt the same. Whoever had kidnapped her, they would happily exterminate together. Finished the job? Signed Timon. Yes, replied Theophilus. I have more armaments to move tomorrow, but all the uniforms are transferred and prepared for dispersal. What do you think of the swords? Inquired Prochorus. Finest quality. Nicholas helped me make a custom one, replied Theophilus. I always liked a short sword. After trying several, he made one for me. I like a morning star. Nicholas made two for me a long time ago, sighed Timon. I am looking forward to using them. Theophilus studied the gentle, green-eyed gardener. He tried to imagine him in battle, swinging morning stars. The giant reached for the kettle. Theophilus noted the length and the bulk of the bulging muscles on Timon's forearm. He decided he was glad they were on the same side. Nicanor, what do you like in a fight? Asked Theophilus. Bare fists are good enough for me, but I do like a sturdy Zweihandler. Cuts through a crowd, replied the cook. With a smile on his face, Prochorus volunteered. Quarterstaff, a big one. The four went back to their tea. Spring is a good time for war, sighed Timon. We should have a drill. Heads nodded in agreement. Let us meet mid-morning in the lower storeroom to try our weapons, suggested Nicanor. This I would like to see, thought Theophilus. Giants preparing for war. Agreed, signed a grinning Prochorus. I will talk with Stephen. Should be fun. Thank you for listening. To hear more of the story, please come back soon. Or you may purchase your own copy on Amazon. Just follow the link below. Until next time.